As we prepared to make our next album, Creatures of the Night, not a lot of A-list producers were knocking at our door. In fact, people weren't even returning our phone calls. Finally, in the summer of 1982, I scheduled a lunch in L.A. where we planned to record the album with a guy named Michael James Jackson. We met at a restaurant called The Melting Pot on the corner of La Cienega Boulevard and Melrose. Michael, it turned out, had no real experience with rock and roll bands, though he had just worked with Jesse Colin Young, the founder of the band The Youngbloods, who had had some hits in the 1960s. When we started chatting, Michael said, "What you guys need to do is write some hit songs." Gee, why didn't I think of that? Fucking brilliant! But I liked him despite being momentarily thrown by that insight. He was very introspective and intellectual, and we began to hit it off. Also, even though I wasn't sure what he had to offer musically, we needed someone. I knew that Gene and I weren't at a point where we could be productive together because neither of us wanted to compromise our respective musical ideas. We needed an intermediary in the studio, someone to be the swing vote. I wrote the songs Creatures of the Night and Danger with a guy named Adam Mitchell who had been in a Canadian band called The Paupers. Adam had also written with a guitar player named Vincent Cusano, and even though Adam didn't have a lot of nice things to say about Vinnie as a person, he said he was a very talented singer-songwriter and that his guitar playing might fit Kiss. It was a scene that would play out often. People always talked about Vinnie's talent and ability, but they never had good things to say about him as a person. The first time Vinnie came to the studio, he started doing a solo and got down on his knees. I thought it was one of the goofiest things I'd ever seen. You just didn't do that at an audition. He seemed wrong somehow. He was odd-looking and shifty, but we were between a rock and a hard place, and Vinnie ended up playing on a lot of tracks for the album. For us, Creatures was done with the shock and realization of how completely lost we had gotten. The album was a declaration of our intent to get back on track. Eric was relieved, as this was what he had expected all along. He was definitely happier all through the recording process. One afternoon, a carload of little kids and what I presumed was one of their dads showed up at the studio, and Gene ushered them into the room where we recorded. They gathered around a microphone. They were there to sing background vocals on a song. What the hell? Gene, it turned out, had made a deal with a Hollywood producer. If the guy could send his kids and their friends to sing background vocals on a Kiss song, Gene would get some brownie points for some acting work out of the guy. Are you fucking kidding me? I was furious, and not just because Gene hadn't asked in advance for my okay. He was whoring us out and compromising our album for his own benefit. It offended me that he tried to get acting roles in that way. I had been studying acting long before he had the idea to get into movies. In fact, he had told me he had no interest in acting. To me, the path was obvious. You studied acting and then auditioned for parts. That was the right way to go about it. Gene didn't see it that way. He just went out and brown-nosed his way in. If you walk behind an elephant, you end up cleaning up the shit. I spent my free time in L.A. with Donna Dixon. Part of the reason I invested so much in Donna was because she still managed to keep me at arm's length, no matter the closeness we had developed. That ignited my old compulsion to see the relationship as a challenge to overcome. Even though we were together, there was still something lacking, and I kept trying to get whatever that was. I was awed by her beauty and placed her on a pedestal, which quickly must become one of the most boring and unsexy places for a woman to be. My dad, though, would no doubt have approved.